All right, so well, I welcome you to what will be a very interesting and different trade recap, review, market mutterings for the 22nd. So let me apologize before I get started, as this may come as an offense to so many of you out there. As you can tell from the title, I'm not in a good mood. In fact, I'm angry, and not only am I angry, I wish to remain angry because that's just how I am. I know you're supposed to think positive all the time, but this is what trading will do to you. And that's why I do these market mutterings, is to let you know this is how trading can be sometimes, even to the best of us. It gets under your skin. Like sometimes it gets under your skin to where it's just boiling, like you feel like your skin is boiling. So let's just talk about it, because really, I don't want to do one. But hey, if you're going to do them when the going's good, you got to do it when you're upset too, right? Full transparency. So let's first talk about, yes, it was a losing day, but it wasn't really that much. It was only a couple of $100. That's not a big deal. It's more the disappointment over my performance and the way I handled myself versus anything else. And I guess, when you think about the whole career that you have, at one point you just want to make money. So if you talk to me 18 years ago and you said, one day you're just going to be mad because you couldn't get as much money as you should have gotten on a trade, and I'd say, well, that's great, because I'd like to have money on some trades since I'm losing on everything I was ever taking. That's another subject. So let's talk about what it is. If you guys were following and you're watching these regularly, I've just been saying, just short this stuff into any kind of spikes, any kind of uptrends, into strength, or you don't buy unless you get significant weakness. And the top stock that has really done well for us all last week, it was on this weekend's mutterings, was BABA. I said, this is just, between BABA and NFLX, those things just go down every single chance they got. So when you get up today and you're looking at this thing already gapping, I was just licking my chops at this point. And I'm just telling everybody in the room, look, man, I am going to nail this thing. If it spikes in the morning, I'm all in. I'm going to nail this. I'm just, I'm boasting. I'm bragging. I'm running my chops. And I get exactly what I want. Exactly what I want. This thing goes vertical, right? This thing must be up $6 or $7. Don't quote me. And I did exactly what I said I was going to do. I was like, I'm shorting this thing if it gets up towards that 150. And I do. And I almost short this thing at high of day. Like I get this dynamite entry on it. And as soon as it drops down to like 149, I take like 60 to 70 cents on this thing. Like six. Now, yes, it was a winning trade. And at one time that would be great. But there's two things, because some of you might be confused. Why are you so angry about that? Well, I'll tell you why. There are two things that really, really irritate me when it comes to trading. One is botching a really tier one layup idea, because you don't always get those types where it's just the perfect scenario played out exactly the way you drew it up. Most of the time you get shaken around a little bit. You got to fight for it here and there, but you don't always get that, what I consider, let's just say, use the word perfect layup. The second thing is fat fingers, which I've often mentioned so many times, because trading is hard enough as it is when you're doing everything right. When you purposely sabotage yourself by making a mistake through an order, that's frustrating. Now, everybody's different. You just might be angry over certain things that I'm not. And, to each their own, and anger sometimes can be a gift. But to me, those are the two biggest things that annoy me, because you have exactly what you're looking for. You've done all the donkey work and the research. And like I said, you were given it on a silver platter, and you just sabotaged yourself. You screwed up. So what I was saying here was, I had been all last week taking 50% partials and letting the rest go. For some reason, this thing just, it was up like $6 or $7, and I just take 60 cents or something stupid like that. And then, I end up getting agitated about, well, I said, I watched it drop another dollar, like almost the moment I got out of it. I watched it drop almost another $1. And I was like, well, if it gets underneath of this 147, then it probably goes lower. And then I watch it there, and then they end up chasing the last piece of it, which turned out to be just a little small scratchy trade. And then the thing just bounces. I mean, I just totally ruined this trade. Now, when you do something like that, and the reason that I'm bringing it up is because you may look at it and you say, yes, it was a winner. But the ramifications and the snowball effect of a trade like this can sometimes do a lot of damage, especially for noobs and those aspiring traders out there, because this is how revenge trading starts. Now, I've long since passed my revenge trading days, but when you botch up something like this that you consider as a tier 1 or a top type of play, then you're just left with, maybe the time frame has passed and you're just left with junk, or the market trades and it gets choppy like it did a little bit later, and you don't really have the opportunity, and the one trade that could have made your day or could have put you where you needed to be, you were already in it, you just screwed it up. And I know we've all been there, okay? After that, I go into Baidu thinking, well, you know, Baidu's going to be the same way up off of this bounce. But by this time, and this was a really good trade, but yet another one that I kind of cut a little too soon. And this was a short, by the way, on the bounce. But the reason that it got that was because I just got impatient. I was already so angry and still carrying over that anger from early on that, you know what, I really didn't care. I know that sounds like something stupid. I didn't care. I was like, I really don't want to. I don't want to trade now. I don't want to trade. It may sound like ignorance to some people, but let me explain. This is what we all go through emotionally. I'm never going to sit here and try to tell you that every single day is good, that I can handle every situation with perfect calm and clarity. I've always said that I get pissed off just like everyone. I'm a human being. I get mad too. I get mad when I do things wrong. I get mad when I make mistakes. You know, just because you become a professional trader and you're very successful at it doesn't mean you've removed your entitlement to being pissed, right? And I want the new people to know this more than anything. That's why I do these recaps, because this is what trading is like. Now, the real lesson in this is it's not the money, you know. The first lesson in this is that it's really important to follow your game plan to the best of your ability. Now, you will definitely have trades like this BABA where you botch it up. As long as it's not a repetitive problem, then it's okay. Every so often, not a big deal. Every so often, even if you fat finger, it's frustrating when it happens. But as long as it's not a chronic problem that continues to plague you, then you should be okay. The real lesson, though, I think lies in here, which is the second part, is kind of what I mentioned earlier, is that it has that snowball effect. It continues to bleed over, because when you get angry, you know, and sometimes maybe it's not even to do with trading. Let's just be honest. Sometimes it comes from stemming maybe from your personal life. Maybe you've had a bad week last week in other areas, or you had a couple of bad trades before. You know, sometimes it could just be outside interferences. You just didn't get off to the start you wanted. It could be a numerous amount of things, or maybe it's anger that has been compiling up for a while, and it was just a small trade like this that just broke the straw that broke the camel's back, right? It could be a numerous amount of those things, and you just kind of overreact. The important thing for us to do is, you know, it's not so much controlling your anger as it is understanding, look, I'm reaching an area here where I'm upset, and when I'm upset, I get, I don't want to say the word confused. It gets under my skin, and I get taken out of my game. You know, this is something big with sports teams. That's why a lot of them talk trash. You know, that's why it's around in sports, because it gets under people's skins, and it takes them out of their element, and it takes them from thinking calm, cool, and collected and sticking to their game plan, and it gets them out of their element, and they make mistakes. You know, boxers, fighters, and MMAers, they've been doing that stuff since the sport started. Football, you see it all the time. Every sport, hockey, you name it. So the thing is to recognize when you're just a little too frustrated, and don't think, you know, I know you see a lot of videos, everybody acts like, oh, I'm happy. I lost $10,000 today. It's okay. I'll make it back. Bullshit, you know? Come on. You're expected to perform in your business. And when you have something like this, to me, at my level, going through what I have gone through, I should have capitalized on this. And that's all there was to it. And that's why I'm angry. And that's why I'm talking about it, because I'm sharing this with you. So really the lesson today here is you will have periods like this. And again, like I said, maybe it's not always about the money. Sometimes it is the money because the loss was too big, but sometimes it was just not executing like you should be. And like we always say that, right? It's idea, execution, management. It's those three things that make a winning trade. So you know, in Bob's case, you had the right idea. You were given the perfect idea. You know, the execution on that was perfect. You know, I mean, you almost got up to the high of day with management. You ruined the trade through poor management and then chased it later getting in. So that's what you got to do. Sometimes you just have to walk away before you do, you know, a bunch of damage that you can't recover from. And that is that. Now, I did have one more trade on NFLX, which was another short. So let me just move on from what I was talking about there, and let's get down to business because that's done with. The last trade that I had was NFLX, and my theory behind all this, just like Baidu and I can't even type it in there right now. Cause he's still mad. Okay, NFLX. All right. I was wanting to short. Well, not wanting. I did shorting into these bounces early. You know, some of this stuff came off the bottom. Let's talk about that because that's more important going into tomorrow. A lot of this stuff bounced really hard. I mean, hardcore. This is a solid bounce coming off the bottom, and we kind of saw it, but I still was I was like, I don't really want to buy this stuff. It hasn't impressed me. And then later on, you're like, okay, well, that was impressive. So you got this nice move, 322. There's a $10 bounce on this thing. I mean, that is massive. And then, of course, it pulls back on. You saw a lot of stocks do this. These ranges in there are just maddening. I mean, the volatility right now is just off the charts with these. You get it wrong here. You know, this is why it's so important to really be patient. If you get it wrong here, or you chase an entry, or you get something bad, you're in the wrong spot on the chart. You're going to get smoked, and then it bounces back up. And you know, by the time the day was over, it did okay. But I got shaken out of this one here on this couple of green bars because I was just so touchy at this point. I'm like, I don't know if we're going to rip to the skies here or this. You know, you always have to still think that even though the market mainly is selling every spike in sight, you still have to respect that 500-600 point rally. When you see something like this, you're like, hey man, NFLX just went $10 and it just got green. We can go $10 more. It could be a $20 move. You need to be careful about certain stuff like that. But I just got shaken out. It wasn't big. It was just more just a sloppy overall day. And I think mainly the slop came from the very beginning, set the tone for by blowing a really good trade, and that's all there was to it. Now, as we move into tomorrow, my thoughts are still the same with these stocks, as if they ramp up or they get really aggressive first thing in the morning. I think you have that period of emotional time there that you can grab some pullbacks in these stocks. I still wouldn't chase them early in the morning. I will say that the market did a relatively decent job of holding most of its stuff. I mean, by the time the day wore on, most of these charts, if you look down through, they kind of just tightened up. They went from erratic behavior, back and forth choppiness to, kind of tightening up, and they have a decent look to them. One of those here is, let's look at a couple of different long ideas just in case things turn around here for a day or two, and maybe you found a shorter term bottom. This Etsy, ETSY, is not a bad look. I mean, you've got over the last 4 or 5 days, you've got some pretty good consolidation, retracing all of Friday's sell-off. You get a nice little range break right here of 44.05, where it's just kind of popped up there post-market. This could be a pretty good one. Again, you got to get the right intraday setup to follow it. Just because it moves through 44.05 is not enough for me right now in this market. It's not the kind of market where you had limited pullbacks, and if you got your entry off a couple of pennies here and there, that it's like, it's okay, I can add to it or I can work the trade. Here, thing might, who knows, it might turn around and give it all back tomorrow. It's hard to tell in this type of a market. Apple has the same kind of a look to it. This one is a pretty good looking daily chart and a pretty good looking intraday chart, considering while the market's been going through consistent selling, making new lows. This thing stopped on October 11th making a low. Like, that was the low there. It's not gone back down there. And for the most part, outside of a few days ago, it's consolidated pretty good. Now, again, you need to see a little bit more data from the market, a little bit more push and some consolidation or some sort of flag build, something besides just greens, because it's real difficult. I know people are still doing it, or traders are still doing it. But when you see greens like this, it's just a bad habit to break. It's hard to, you can't run into that here. I mean, it was never a good idea to begin with. Doing it in this type of a market just seems like an even worse idea. So those two kind of look good for some greenage if you get some good looks in this market. And it looks like it's going to be a strong day. I like those two stocks. Now, there is still a short I got in my mind, which is Shop. Now, I got hit on this the other day by shorting this thing. And I picked the only day really was green. It was right here, and it was stubborn, and I closed it out at the end of the day for a loss. The next day, it just gets totally barbecued, man. Look, and then it goes all the way back down to the low day on the chart. Now, this is obviously pretty good support. So once it gets down here, it bounces off, and it was like up 7 today, another strong day. So I'll be seeing if this candle gets wiped out tomorrow. I'll be looking for that. Now, the last time it got down here, I obviously put in 3 or 4 good days. So maybe this is the start of 3 or 4 days. You always got to be careful what you're at in the bottom of the chart. Plus, they got earnings. So if the setup is there, I'm slightly interested in it. So I'm going to leave it at that. Yes, it was a red day. Yes, I'm angry. I'll cool off by tomorrow. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll be back at it. I've definitely been through worse. But remember those lessons, because I think when I look back and, a lot of people say, what's the difference between an amateur and a pro? Like, where were these light bulbs that went off in your head along the way that let you know, look, you can make it. You belong here. You can do this. And one of them was just controlling your behavior. It was look. And I'm not saying like you don't have a right to be angry, because you do, or disappointed in yourself because you didn't achieve your goals, or you're not living up to what you think your standards are. But there's times when you realize, look, you know what? I'm not in my right mind right now. And rather than worrying about stats as like, am I going to win for another day? Am I going to keep my win streak going like I would have years ago? I want to try to keep my winning streak going. No, just walk away. The market's open tomorrow. There'll be another opportunity. There'll be another Bob is set up. It'll be there, and you'll just be that much clearer headed to take advantage of it. So remember that, because it's those things that you do that, number one, you can do damage and lose money and not be able to recover from that, or make that situation, that anger, it just compounds it and it gets worse. On top of that, the real enemy here is doing that on a regular basis and making that a habit. That's a bad habit. And if you continue to do that, you will always suffer. And you'll never get rid of it. You'll just be a chronic problem with you. And that will hinder you. You're just not being fair to yourself. So anyway, guys, you enjoy the rest of your evening. I am done. I'm going to go out and rake some dirt in the yard or something. Get rid of this cranky energy. And be back at it tomorrow. As always, if you need help with your personal trading, you do know where I'm at. Feel free to visit thelincolnlist.com. Trade with us live. As always, trade well. I'll talk to everyone tomorrow.